I think most people in the room will know who Trina Solar are. You'll be glad to know that I'm not going to spend today giving you an unashamed plug about our wonderful modules. It's really all about walking through the highlights of the solar strategy. Just the quick headlines though around Trina Solar. I think we are now the second largest manufacturer in the world with some 3.8 gigawatts predicted for this year. What some of you may not know is our heavy involvement in developing our own projects. We have somewhere between 700 and 800 megawatts in development globally around all the developing markets, and we had our first foray into the UK in Q1 this year, and we completed 25 megawatts of pilot projects. So we're a bit more than just being a manufacturer now. But anyway, enough about Trina. If anybody wants to catch up with me about my Trina hat, then please, over the next couple of days, come and have a chat with me. Okay, so yeah, I think the next couple of days, inevitably, it'll be dominated by conversations around the potential for the RO changes. But regardless, we still have this backdrop. The solar strategy has been a long time in the making, and it's only right that we kick off today with having a walkthrough and look at the key aspects of what the solar strategy means to all of us. Whether you're involved in residential, commercial or large scale, it still has an impact. Okay, so 5 key areas that I want to run through today. So the targets, initiatives, innovation, policy reforms and collaboration. Okay, so what does it mean for the targets? What does the solar strategy say? Well, the first thing is that we have this, okay, it's non-binding, but it does set out a goal for 20 gigawatts. When we look at what's been in the past, it was far, far lower than that. The intent to install on government buildings, that's very interesting. Again, if we can actually start to realise that, 1 gigawatt, maybe it's an ambitious target. Not all of the buildings are suitable. Certainly Whitehall in the photograph there I would think would be a challenge. But there are many, many, many other government buildings that we could target. And, Greg Barker has been quite clear in what he has to say about not wasting 1 inch of roof space. Okay, initiatives. Well, there's been a number of initiatives. There's this commitment to work with developers, commercial property owners, planning authorities, etc. I think we all recognise if we are to start deploying onto large commercial roofs that we do need to cut away red tape. We do need to have greater access to that. As Nick quite rightly said, it's a balance across all of these different types of deployment which will actually give us the maximum return. Large-scale ground mount is obviously going to give us the biggest return, but we need a mixture right across, and that also helps us use the grid in the most effective way. There is this, it is stated within the strategy that there is this refocus on commercial rooftops. I'd like to think with the right type of representation from the people in this room and beyond, that we can maintain the level of deployment on large scale. We need to go out with one voice, but we should be able to maintain that same level of deployment on large scale and then have commercial rooftops as an additional stream. One of the interesting aspects for me from the strategy was the intent to target schools quite specifically. There are 24,000 schools. A lot of them are not in great condition, but there are some that have got good rooftops facing in the right direction. And where we can, there's very good news stories attached to those, and it really helps our brand image as an industry if we can engage with those community type schemes. So innovation, again, there's a commitment to support solar technology and financial innovation. Certainly if we are going to move into these different areas, as I look around the room today, there are many faces here that I'm familiar with. There are also some that I'm not familiar with, and I find that very, very encouraging because it means that we've got new money, new approaches, new ways of doing things within our industry, and that only leads to growth. But the strategy talks specifically about innovation within the types of products that are deployed. whether that be thin film, different types of solar glass, built-in solar, etc. And out of that, there was a specific decision to commission the Solar PV Strategy Group. Over the next 6 months, they will conduct a study and then report to government on the opportunities for reducing the overall costs of installation and deployment. We've already heard today that the downward curve for reduction of cost is absolutely incredible and compares incredibly well against other renewable technologies. Okay, so policy reforms. Well, perhaps policy is not the thing to be mentioning at the moment, given that I wrote this a week or so ago. It just shows how fast things can move in solar, that we're now facing potentially a further consultation. But there is a pledge within the strategy that DEC will work with DCLG to extend permitted development rights in England to cover building mounted systems with up to 1 megawatt capacity. One way, easing those planning requirements has to be at least a step in the right direction. And there will also be a review of the feed-in tariff for installations over 50 kilowatt peak. Okay, so collaboration as the sort of fifth strand. So there's a commitment to work with the Solar Trade Association to promote its recently published 10 commitments. Keep calling it the 10 Commandments. I should make sure I refer to it as commitments. To help ensure that solar farm developments are built in the best way, that we move towards much higher standards within solar farms that we are developing. We've already heard from Jonathan about the commitments on biodiversity and the connections that have been made with all the various bodies such as the RSPB, etc. So a pledge to work with BIS, UK Trade and Investment, the Foreign Office, etc., to be able to maximise any technology that we might be able to export as UK PLC, and a move to work with the solar industry to encourage the recruitment of a greater number of women. We are a male-dominated industry, but looking out there today, there's a significant amount of women in the audience, but I think it's only right that we have a specific commitment to redress that balance. A commitment to work with the Solar PV Grid Task Force to assess connection costs, waiting times, and having a look to see what can be done to speed up those connection times. I think everybody who's developed a solar farm knows that the DNO can be a significant part of the risk and delays that can occur. You heard from Nick about using helicopters to fly the engineers around. So finally, a move to work with the Innovation Task Force to encourage UK solar companies to adopt carbon lifestyle accreditation and to find ways to cut their carbon footprint. Okay, I thought it was worth running through what the STA 10 commitments are. I'm sure you'll have these ran through again over the next couple of days in some detail. But very quickly, I thought it was worth talking through them because it kind of sets the framework of what we're trying to achieve within large scale. And I've very much got my STA hat on when I talk about this. It's only through moving towards standardisation and very high quality installations that we're going to be able to safeguard the future of our industry. There is a potential if we have low quality installations for very bad publicity. We don't want to go the way of wind. So it's important that as an industry we start to self-regulate and move towards higher standards. So first, we'll focus on non-agricultural land or land which is of lower agricultural quality. I would imagine everybody in the room knows of at least one installation on ground mount which doesn't satisfy that, and those are the things that get picked up on in the press, where we end up with NIMBYism, etc. So a commitment to looking at the right type of land at the very start point has got to be a positive thing. So we'll be sensitive to nationally and locally protected landscapes and nature conservation areas, and we welcome the opportunities to enhance the ecological value of the land. Yeah, wherever possible, if we can improve the the actual ecological value of the land. Again, that's got to be a good thing. The biodiversity engagement that we've had in recent days is an indication of that. So we'll minimise visual impact where possible, so screening, good assessments at the early part of the project. Again, it's got to be a very useful thing. Anything that's, and again, there are projects around the country as you drive around that are extremely visible, and that does hand over, it puts us in a situation where it leaves us very open to criticism, and we need to be aware of that as the industry grows, that we need to be responsible in what we do. Okay. 4, we'll engage with the community in advance of submitting a planning application. I think there are some fantastic stories to be had, and excellent PR if we can engage with the community in the right way. We've already heard about the very high levels of acceptance for large-scale PV when it's deployed responsibly. Percentages in the 80s of local communities. And if we engage in the right way, then the likelihood is that when we want to do something in the next village or the next town, it's accepted that much better because word goes out by hand of mouth. So we'll encourage land diversification by proposing continued agricultural use or incorporating biodiversity. We've already talked about that. Very important to tackle the issues of having a lot of what are seen as sort of foreign EPCs, etc. Wherever we can, if we can employ locally at least to some degree, it really helps with the acceptability. 7, we'll act considerately during construction and demonstrate solar stewardship of the land for the lifetime of the project. So solar stewardship, it means steering this in the right direction. It means not just installing it and then running away. It means about making sure that we constantly send out the right messages both locally and on a national basis. Okay, so I talked already about getting the support of the local community, listening to their views, their suggestions. Wherever we can, we should commit to using the solar farm as an educational opportunity, bringing in the next generation, etc., so that they understand what it actually takes and what it means to have a solar farm on their doorstep. And at the end of the project, we commit to returning the land to its former use. Like I said, I've rattled through those 10 points. I'm sure you'll hear a lot from various different parties, from the NSC, from the trade associations, etc., over the next couple of days. But I think this acts as a neat backdrop, really, because at the end of these 2 days, if we can get to a situation where we're a little more aligned and we all walk away with a commitment to at least some of these areas, the quality of the installations that we do will be greater. Okay, so in summary, the solar strategy is a further step change in deployment for solar in the UK. It remains to be seen what actually happens at the end of this consultation that's about to be announced tomorrow. But based on changes that have happened in the past, the industry has always recovered and found ways to battle through. And I'm hopeful, with the right voice in a unified way, that we can make sure that what damage is done is kept to a minimum, or alternatively avoided completely. But the solar strategy, just coming back to that, it is the first one that we've had released by any European government. So we should take some solace from that, even though some of the wording in it is a little woolly and not very prescriptive. Reality is at least we have something to hang our hat on. There is emphasis on encouraging the deployment of rooftop solar, that's for sure. But we all know that rooftop is on its own isn't going to be enough to satisfy the energy demands that we're all working towards, and the carbon reduction, etc. But it does target, like I said, about 1 million homes. We're already about halfway there on residential installations. Overall, my summary would be that it is a brighter future for the UK. If you take those five key areas that we started out with, I kind of think of it like a 5-pointed star, and But like any star, each part of that, each point, sort of shines slightly greater or less. But nevertheless, the general view is that we have got support for solar in the UK. We need to address this particular situation that we have right now, but it should lead to a brighter future. Okay, I'm not sure whether it was well advised to put this picture up right now, but I say it was, when I wrote this, it was all going to be super positive. But I thought that I should finish off with the words of Greg Barker. And what he has to say here is we've managed to put ourselves among the world's leaders on solar, and this strategy will help us stay there. There is massive potential to turn our large buildings into power stations, and we must take the opportunity this offers our economy. Solar, and I can't read that now because he's got his piece of paper in front of it. Oops. Sorry. And reliable energy supplies that the country needs at low cost to consumers. I thought that was a very positive statement by him. But so we need to focus on battling the large-scale threatened cuts. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.